Okay. We only have 9 people in the class. Okay. Okay. Let's just wait for a couple of minutes and then we'll get started. Any questions from last time? So let me just share my screen. So you're able to see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So, how many are in? 18. Okay, I think we'll get started. So we stopped at this point where we were looking at depth, area, duration curves, right? So any questions on this? Okay. So the next thing we're going to discuss about is frequency of occurrence. Okay. So remember we are talking about precipitation and rainfall events. So far we've been discussing about the duration of the event, or the depth of the rainfall, or the area that it impacts, and so on. But there's one more aspect to it, which is how often it will occur, right? Or the frequency of occurrence, right? So whenever you have an extreme rainfall event, right? So if you want to plan for flooding or some kind of situation like that in your watershed, or in your urban area, or in your catchment, and so on, you need to know what are the extreme rainfall events that happen in that region, right? Whether it is even if you're planning for a dam, for example, right? You want to have a dam, you need to know what are the extreme rainfall events that happen in that area where you're building the dam, and how often does it occur, right? So these extreme events, do they happen? Yes. Any
Sir,
question? Yes.
in that previous curve,
Okay.
we are already talking about some area, right? So what does that area in the graph indicate?
Okay, good question. So the area on this graph is indicating the area of the catchment that is experiencing that rainfall. Okay.
So
For
the
example,
catchment has some area. So when you go from when there are different areas in the graph. So what areas do they indicate?
okay. So now the area, so for example, not all catchments are of the same size. Okay. Within the catchment. So if for example, some catchments may be 100 square kilometers, some of them may be 1,000 square kilometers, and so on. But within, let us say, just imagine that there is a catchment that is, what is the largest number here? 5,000 square kilometers.
Yes.
Okay. 5,000 square kilometers, I have a catchment. Within that catchment, okay, if I divide it into smaller areas for the same rainfall event, which lasts for the same duration, the entire area of that catchment will not experience the same amount of rainfall. Okay. So for example, just imagine this. Okay. So let me just draw. It's a very important question. Okay. Okay. So let us say I have a catchment, okay, which is like this. Okay. Let us assume it's a huge catchment. Okay. And if a storm arrives, let us say from this direction, and enters into this catchment, every part of the catchment will not receive the same amount of rainfall. Let us say this storm lasts for 12 hours. Okay. And it covers the entire catchment, but the entire catchment will not receive the same amount of rainfall. Or what I'm saying is, different points in the catchment will not receive the same amount of rainfall. Okay. So if maybe the center of the storm where the maximum rainfall happens, let us say it's covering this area. Okay. So any area, so if let us say this area is 100 square kilometers. just imagine this is 100 square kilometers. Okay, so
Okay.
this area is 100 square kilometers. Within this area, over this 12-hour duration, you are receiving a maximum depth of, okay, so this much. So this is 100, right? This corresponds to 100. Okay. So in this area, you're receiving 20 centimeters of rainfall over 12 hours.
Okay.
Okay. Now, if I'm looking for a larger area, okay, so then let us say this smaller area is inside this larger area. Okay. And let us say that
Okay.
larger area is 1000 square kilometers.
Hmm.
Okay. So then, so on this graph, you come up here, it intersects at this point, whereas this one intersected at that point. 100 square kilometers receives an average an average depth of 20 centimeters of rainfall. Whereas if I look at a larger area, which is, let us say, 1000 square kilometers, it receives, what is that, 16 centimeters of rainfall. Does that make sense? That's what we are talking about. Same rainfall event, same duration, 12 hours. In that 12 hours, this smaller area, that smallest dashed area that you see, that one received an average rainfall of 20 centimeters. Same rainfall event, same 12 hours. If you take a larger area, that second area that I drew,
Okay.
that one receives only 16 centimeters of rainfall. Okay.
Okay.
And then if I look at the entire 5000 square kilometer area, then that might have received, where is it intersecting? That is intersecting somewhere here, which is probably, what, I don't know, 14 centimeters of rainfall. Is that okay?
Okay.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Okay. Okay. And so how do we use this and estimate whether there'll be a flood or not?
Okay, so now, okay, so let us say the smaller area of 100 square kilometers is receiving 20 centimeters of rainfall.
Hmm.
Okay, so 20 centimeters of rainfall over that much area will generate some amount of flood,
Okay.
right? That
Hmm.
amount you can estimate because you know the depth of rainfall over that area, and you also know the area, I mean the area occupied by that dashed region,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
So if I know the characteristics of that region, what kind of soil is there, what kind of vegetation is there, is it an urban area, is it a forest area, is it so on and so forth, you can estimate how much would have been the runoff if the amount of rainfall received in those 12 hours was 20 centimeters. This is the amount of runoff that would have been generated from that area. Then you go to the larger area. There you say, okay, 1000 square kilometers, subtract this 100 out because that has been already accounted for. The remaining 900 square kilometers is giving an average of, let us say, what is that, 16 centimeters of rainfall. Then you know the land use characteristics there, you know the kind of soil there, right? It's a very detailed analysis. It's not so easy,
Okay. Okay.
right? And typically this
Okay.
kind of thing is not done by hand. Okay.
Hmm.
This kind of thing is done usually using a computer program and so on. When it used to be done, maybe 50 years ago, it used to, you had to do it by hand. So then you had to, use these kinds of curves and do it by hand and try to estimate how much of a runoff will be generated from this entire area, given that a storm of such and such a duration happens over this area. Is that okay?
Okay. Okay, sir.
All right. Anybody else? Okay. Let's keep going. So we are talking about the frequency of occurrence. So if I know that there is an extreme rainfall event that is happening and you want to plan for the floods, it would be vital to know how often this kind of an event occurs, right? So generally speaking, if I look at rainfall over, as a function of time, right? This year you will receive a given location may receive 1000 millimeters of rainfall. Next year, the same location may receive only 800 millimeters. The year after that, it may receive 1300 millimeters. Every year it varies back and forth. Okay. On average, you will receive, let us say, 1000 millimeters of rainfall, but any given year, it may be plus or minus 10%, plus or minus 20%. And in a given year, you may even receive 500 millimeters of rainfall. There's no guarantee that just because the average is 1000, that every year you will receive 1000, right? There may be some years which we call a drought year, which may receive only 500, which may receive 600 or whatever it may be, right? It's possible, right? So if you assume that as a random hydrologic process, right, then you are able to use, a data set of, all the events that have taken place over time, and then create what is called a time series, okay, which you typically you collect this data over a sufficiently long time, okay. So if I have the last 100 years of data, then I can come up with a very good estimate of what is the average rainfall that is received in this particular location, okay. And I'll know how often you get the average, how often you get more than average, how often you get less than average, and so on, right? It's fairly obvious, right? If I have historic information for the last 100 years, I will be able to very easily predict what is the likelihood of an extreme event happening. Oh, this kind of an event happens once in 100 years. This kind of an event happens once in 50 years, and so on. You might have heard somebody speaking like this. Oh, it's a once in a lifetime event, like that. People say, right? Which means that it is something that doesn't happen very frequently. It is something that happens. The proverb is once in a blue moon, right, and so on. So all that is indicating is what is the likelihood of such an event happening, right? That is what this frequency or the probability of occurrence tells us, right? So you can estimate the probability of occurrence using some kind of a frequency analysis, assuming that you have a sufficiently long data set of what has happened in the past. And then if you know the probability, okay, as the animation wasn't working well there, that's okay. If you know the probability of occurrence of a given extreme event, then you can find out what the return period or recurrence interval of that event was, okay. Which means if I know the probability, then I do 1 by p, that tells me how often it will happen, right? So if the probability of occurrence is 0.2, then it is something that will happen in how many years? 5. Every 5 years you may have that particular event happening. If the probability is 0.1, then it will happen every 10 years. If the probability is 0.01, it will happen every 100 years, and so on, right? That doesn't mean it cannot happen two consecutive years. It means the probability of happening is once in 100 years, okay. All right. Okay, so see, this is talking about it is kind of a little bit, you may not understand what it means when I talk about it in a very abstract way. So what we'll do is we'll solve an example, okay. So I'll just tell you about how we do this, okay. So let us say I have the data for the last n years, okay. So suppose I have information about the last n years, how much rainfall has happened, okay. So the first thing I do is arrange that data in descending order. Okay, descending order means from the largest to the smallest. Why do we do it in descending order? Because we are interested in probability of exceedance, right? Most of the time we are interested in probability of exceedance. Why are we interested in probability of exceedance? Why are we interested in probability of exceedance? Because we are talking about extreme rainfall events, right? What is the likelihood that this year the rainfall will exceed 1,500 millimeters, the annual rainfall, right? Because that is what gives us the extreme event. Once you make your design for the extreme event, it is able to the design is able to take care of any event that is less likely, right? If your dam is able to store water or able to control a flood even during the extreme event, then any other event it is able to manage, right? So that is why we are looking at the likelihood of exceeding some large number. So that is what we define as an extreme event, right? Otherwise it's pretty straightforward, right? Is that okay? Yeah. So the first thing we do is arrange the data in descending order, and then we assign an order number for every entry, right? So in this case, we are calling it a small letter m. Okay. So if I arrange everything in descending order and give ranking, so the largest number will be rank m equal to 1. The next largest will be m equal to 2, and the last one will be m equal to n. So that is the smallest number that has been observed in the last 100 years or 50 years or whatever it may be. Okay, so the probability of exceedance is simply m divided by n plus 1. Okay, why do we say m divided by n plus 1? For any given entry, for any given number, why do we divide m by n plus 1 and why not by n? Anybody Can you tell us why we divide it by n plus 1 and not by n? When there are n data points, why do we divide it by n plus 1 and not n?
Probability should not be equal to 1.
Okay, so probability should rather, if you say probability is equal to 1, then you're saying there is no chance of anything happening which is other than what you're predicting, right? If I divide it by m by small m by capital N, you will get for m equal to n, you will get a probability of 100%, right? In order to avoid that, because it is still possible, for the last 100 years, you may not have received less than 500 millimeters of rainfall, but next year you may receive 495, right? So it is never, it's never good to say something is impossible, right? So therefore, we use this, n plus 1 technique. It's just a simple mathematical trick to ensure that you don't get p equal to 1. Okay, so that way you compute the probability of exceedance, and then the return period is simply 1 by p, so that becomes n plus 1 by m. Okay, so this is what is called the Weibull formula. Okay, it's a very popularly used technique for estimating probability of exceedance. Okay, let's solve one quick example, and I think that will illustrate what we are talking about very well for you. Okay, so let us look at this problem. Any questions so far? You're understanding what we're talking about, right? We are interested in trying to find out how often some extreme events will happen. Okay. Okay. So the record of annual rainfall at station A covering a period of 22 years is given below. Okay. From 1960 to 1981, that's 22 years. Estimate the annual rainfall with a return period of 10 years and 50 years. What would be the probability of an annual rainfall of magnitude equal to or exceeding 100 centimeters occurring at station A? That's part B. And then part C, of course, there's a typo there. It says part B again. It should be part C. What is the 75% dependable annual rainfall at station A? Okay. Does everybody understand the question? I'm going to have somebody, attempt to explain to me the steps by which I would solve this kind of a problem. Okay. I'm giving you the annual rainfall from 1960 to 1981. Okay. And I'm saying, estimate the annual rainfall with a return period of 10 years and 50 years for this location. Okay. So what is the first thing we'll do? Who wants to take a guess? Let me call somebody. Prem Sukh.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Can you tell us what we should do? First thing that we should do?
First thing, we arrange data in descending order from 1960 to 81.
Okay. No, not from 1960 to 81. The numbers. You should look at the rainfall number and arrange it in descending order. Correct. Very good. Okay. Rahul. Rahul. Are you there?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Yeah. So after we arrange it in descending order, what should we do?
From 130 to the minimum.
No,
So
130 is not is 130 the largest
that
number?
formula na m upon 1 plus m divided by n plus 1.
Okay. So can you tell me, one second, can you tell me which one will be rank 1? Look at all these rainfall numbers and which one will be rank 1, which means m equal to 1.
160.0, 1977.
Very good. Okay. And what will be the last rank?
That is this 60.
Very good. 1974. Okay.
Yeah.
Bowman, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So now Prem Sukh and Rahul have told us that first we will arrange it in descending order, and then we will give ranks to all of these events. Okay. Whichever is the highest rainfall will get the highest rank, and whichever has the lowest rainfall will get the last rank. Okay. Now, the next question is, how do we estimate the rainfall with the return period of 10 years? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, sir, with formula, sir.
Yeah. What is the formula? Yeah, we'll just go back. We'll just go back to the previous. Oops. This one?
Yes, sir.
Huh. Don't worry if you don't remember the
Yes, sir.
formula. So what will this tell us? Okay. I think it's a little abstract. So let me just go to the solution. Maybe then, okay. So here, what I've done is I've arranged all of these rainfall events in descending order. So the largest is 160, that has a rank of 1. Next highest is 143, rank of 2, and so on to 60, which has a rank of 22. Okay. Then I'm computing the probabilities, m divided by n plus 1. Small m is 1 for 160. So it gets 1 divided by n is 22. 22 plus 1, 23. 1 by 23.043. 2 by 23.087, and so on. So at the last, the 22nd entry has a probability of 95.7. What does that mean? That there is a 95.7% probability that the annual rainfall at this location will be, Bowman, can you answer that? This 95.7% probability means that the annual rainfall at this location will be greater than, I'm pointing the mouse there.
Yeah, sir.
What is the answer?
Sir, I'm not clear, sir.
You're not clear.
Sir, network is somewhat not good, sir.
That's fine. That's fine. No issues. I'll try to explain it again. Okay. Thank you, Bowman. Yeah, you can mute yourself again. Let me just explain this again. Now, what do these probabilities mean? These probabilities mean, so for example, let's look at the very first one, 0.043, which means 4.3%. That at this location, given this information, there is a 4.3% chance that you will receive more than 160 centimeters of rainfall, greater than or equal to 160 centimeters of rainfall. Given this information, there is a 4.3% chance of receiving rainfall greater than or equal to 160 centimeters. The next one, there is an 8.7% chance of receiving a rainfall of greater than or equal to 143 centimeters. And so on. If you come all the way down, this probability means that there is a 95.7% chance of the annual rainfall being greater than or equal to 60 centimeters. That's what the exceedance probability means. Exceedance means exceeding. The probability that the rainfall will exceed 60 centimeters is 95.7%. The probability that the rainfall will exceed 160 centimeters is 4.3%. Okay. So is this absolutely clear to everybody? Any questions, please stop me right now.
Sir, on m equals to 13, why isn't the return period given? Is it like a typo?
M equal to 13. That might be a typo. I don't know. Or I don't know. Maybe I have to check the textbook. Maybe the textbook also has this typo. There's no reason why you just do 1 by p, right? And p is not 0. So therefore, it might be a typo. Huh? Yeah. So any other questions? Sorry, any other? Looks like the textbook has just missed that point. I'm looking at the physical copy of the textbook. That one has also missed that particular row. There's no reason why it's missing. Okay, the number should be over here. It will be 1 by 0.565. Okay. So you see, what have we done? We have come up with the probabilities of exceedance for each of these annual rainfalls. So for example, I want somebody to read out the answer to me. What is the probability that rainfall will be greater than or equal to 89 centimeters? So who do we call? Anjana. Oh, Raza, you see the answer? I've got the answer. Anjana, can you answer this?
0.609.
0.609. So probability is 60.9%. Raza, the reason for that is the rainfall received in those 2 years is the same, 89 and 89. So therefore, this one has no meaning.
Right.
Therefore, this. Very good. Thank you. Okay, so everybody understood what we are saying? That the probability that rainfall will be greater than or equal to 89 in a given year is 60.9%, right? So any rainfall number that you see in this second column, corresponding probability of exceedance is given in the third column. Okay. And then once I have the probability, I'm able to very easily estimate what the return period is, right? So simple. I just do 1 by P, where P is this third column is P, T, capital T, the return period or the recurrence interval is 1 by P. So I do 1 by P and I simply get this number over here. So this means that once in 23 years, you will get a rainfall of 160 centimeters or more.
Sir, how can you say that what all you are doing is correct?
Okay. Now, I understand where your question is coming from. Let us say instead of 22 years, let us say I had 200 years of data. Instead of 22 years, if I had 200 years of annual rainfall, would you agree that what I'm doing is more correct?
Don't know.
No. You should be, see, you should note how carefully I chose my words. I'm saying with 22 years, you're saying, hey, this just looks like, how do you know this is correct? But instead of 22 years, if I had 200 years of data, would my analysis be more correct? I didn't say, will it be 100% correct? I said it will be more correct. You understand the question? If I have more years of data, do I have more confidence in these numbers?
No, sir.
No. How can you say that? Let us say, let us say there is a 1-year-old baby who has only seen the last 1 year. Assume that this baby can talk and all that. Okay. And you ask this baby, hey, what is the weather in your country, in your place like? The 1-year-old baby will say, oh, last year, whatever the rainfall was, it will say, you know what? This place always receives 100 centimeters of rainfall, because that baby has only seen 1 year of rainfall. You go and ask somebody who is 80 years old. He'll say, yeah, some years we get more rainfall, some years we get less rainfall, some years you get 800 millimeters, some years you get 500 millimeters, some years you get 1000. There was even this 1 year when I was 10 years old, we received 1500 millimeters of rainfall. The 80-year-old man will say that, right?
Yes.
Whose information will you take more seriously, the 1-year-old baby or the 80-year-old man? Assuming the 80-year-old man is remembering everything correctly. Assume that he's got a notebook where he's recording every year's information. Okay. You will definitely give more, you will believe the 80-year-old person more than that 1-year-old baby, right? Because the 80-year-old person has seen more of life or has seen more of this rainfall and he's recorded in his notebook, whatever it is. That has more value. If you are going to plan to build a dam, you will not ask that 1-year-old baby, what is the rainfall that this place receives? Because that 1-year-old baby has only seen 1 year. He doesn't know anything more. Even a 10-year-old person will, that 10-year-old child has only seen 10 years of rainfall. So who knows? The 80-year-old person has seen 80 years of data. So you can trust that. That's all I'm saying. So don't ask me whether this is correct or not. It's not a question of being correct. It is a question of being more accurate. If I have more data, I feel more confident. You know what? Hey, I did the best I could. I took the last 100 years data and predicted the probability. That has more meaning than taking the last 5 years data and predicting the probability. Correct? So that is the point I'm making. Purnachandra, does that satisfy you?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else? So your question is perfectly valid. How do you know this is correct? There's no question of being correct in this. There's only a question of trying to get an answer with the available information. Okay. If I had tried to solve an example with 100 years, it will take me 5 pages to just write the numbers down, right? So that is why the textbook also, instead of doing an example with 100 years, they are doing it with 22 years. They also know that 22 years is not good enough. When you want to make this kind of assessment, the longer the data you have, the better your assessment will be. This is not a prediction with utmost certainty. It is a prediction with available information. If available information is 22 years, you take it with a pinch of salt. If available information is 100 years, you feel a little bit more confident. If available information is 500 years, you feel even more confident. Okay, your confidence increases as the number of years of data increases. Simple as that. Okay, so we've still not answered the question. What was the question? What is the annual rainfall with a return period of 10 years? So from this information, can we find out what is the annual rainfall with a return period of 10 years? Okay, who can answer that? Let's see. Who has not yet? Pujit. Yeah. For 10 years, for a return period of 10 years, how will you find out what the rainfall is? Ten is not the return period is this fourth column, right? The fourth column has the return period.
Yes.
But a return period of 10 years is nowhere seen in this table. So what do? You have 7.6 and you have 11.5, but 10 is somewhere in between. What will you do? Say it loudly.
Interpolation.
So you have to interpolate between 7.6 and 11.5. For 7.6 years, the rainfall is 130 centimeters. For 11.5 years, the rainfall is 143 centimeters. So the answer is somewhere between 130 and 143. Where it is, you can interpolate and find out. Everybody knows how to interpolate. It's not very difficult. You will assume it's linear between these 2 points, and you just simply get an answer for the annual rainfall. Okay, so for t equal to 10 years, rainfall is 137.9. Okay, somewhere between 130 and 143. Is that okay? All right. For 50 years, what do you do for 50 years? Who would like to go for it? Bittu. Bittu, can you unmute yourself?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So for 50 years, what will you do for a return period of 50 years? That was the second part of the question. For 10 years, Pujit answered that we will interpolate between these 2 points. What about for 50 years? What can you do? It's the opposite of interpolate.
Yes.
What is that? You have to extrapolate, right? So you will assume that this trend is going to continue, and you will extrapolate. Extrapolation is a very dangerous business. Okay. So for t equal to 50 years, you find that the rainfall is equal to 180 centimeters, assuming that the same linear trend extends into the for larger return periods. Is that okay? Yes.
Which linear trend? The trend from 2 to 1?
Now that's a good question. You can either say that you will take the linear trend between 11.5 and 23 and extrapolate it to 50 and find out what that number will be, or you fit a linear trend for the entire data from 1.045 to 23. If you put them all on a plot, okay, so let us say if I put all of it on the plot, so let us say on the x-axis I have t, and on y-axis I have rainfall. Okay, I just say R in centimeters. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, so then you have something like that. You may have some data like that. Okay. You can either extrapolate just this. Okay. The trend from here to here, you can extrapolate it to 50 years. Or you can fit this entire trend. You can fit a line. Okay, I'm sorry. Assume that. Understand what I'm saying? You can fit a line that goes through all of these points. Okay, just assume that I've drawn it correctly. Okay, you can either fit a line to those last 2 points, which can give you a relatively more substantial error. It depends really on how different these two slopes are. Right? When you extrapolate, extrapolation in any case is a very dangerous business. Okay, preferably don't extrapolate. Okay, extrapolation is, so that's why it's difficult, right? If you only have data for 22 years, what confidence will you have in saying this one will happen every 50 years? You've not seen 50 years. How do you know it will happen every 50 years? Right? So extrapolation is a little bit dangerous. But if this is all the information you have and you have to extrapolate, then you'll have to do something, right? So you may do it along with the cautionary note that maybe you are terribly off. Okay.
Sir.
Yes.
Sir, like here we're doing like an empirical analysis of the data. Sir, is it possible to like have a mathematical function that suits the data and we can analyze it, because it will give us even more confidence?
No, that's what we did just now, right? When I fit a line through this data, this is the data as a function of rainfall as a function of time period, how often return period, how often that rainfall is exceeded, right?
Sir,
yes.
Sir, but we are assuming that the relationship is linear now. It's possible that the relationship may not be linear and may have a different dimension on which it would depend.
Fair enough. See, okay, so I've just drawn it as if it's linear. Okay, let me try to not draw it as a. Oops, sorry. There's no necessity that it has to be linear. Okay, let me try to draw it as if it's non-linear. Okay, so then we'll try it again. Let us say okay, it's something like that. Okay, terrible job, but let us say you have to fit a curve that goes like this. Okay. This may be an exponential curve. It may be a second order curve, a third order curve, whatever it is. Even in this, you can do extrapolation, right? Right. When you fit a curve through this, what you are getting is you are getting an expression for y in terms of x, right? So the question is, when t equal to 50 years, which means when x equal to 50, what will y be? If I know this function, I simply put in the value of x for x equal to 50 and get the value of y, right? That's all. It's not necessary that the line, this function has to be a straight line. It could be an exponential, it could be a logarithmic, it could be x cube, x power 4, x power 5, whatever it is. Once I know this function, all I have to do is put in the value of x and get the value of y, right? Does that satisfy you?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, I mean, for the sake of simplicity, I drew it as a straight line. You can, of course, do any function. Okay. When you're extrapolating, I would rather extrapolate a linear function than a non-linear function, because non-linear function can very quickly increase. It's so dangerous.
Yes,
okay,
sir.
it's somehow not erasing this. I don't know why. Chalo, anyway. Yeah. So then the previous question, the next question was, what would be the probability of an annual rainfall of magnitude equal to or exceeding 100 centimeters occurring at station A, right? So what would be the probability that the rainfall is greater than 100 centimeters? So then what do? You come back to this and look at the table. Do you see 100 centimeters? You don't see 100 centimeters. You see 96 and 102. So what is the probability that rainfall will be greater than 100 centimeters? So again, same thing. You have to interpolate between 96 and 102. Up to 100 you have to interpolate, and then you will solve for it. So you get, it will be somewhere between 0.435 and 0.391. When you interpolate, you get 0.417, which means that the probability that the rainfall will be greater than or equal to, not equal to, greater than or equal to 100 centimeters should be 41.7%. Is that okay? Okay.
Right.
The last part of the question was, what is the 75% dependable annual rainfall at station A? Okay. So can somebody attempt this? What is the 75% dependable rainfall? What does that mean? What does 75% dependable mean?
A rainfall that has a probability of 75% or above.
Correct. So how would you do that? Just look at the table.
Between 80 and 83.
Correct. Right? Is that okay with everybody? All right. So 75% dependable rainfall means P equal to 0.75, which gives you a rainfall of 82.3. So that's, you've obtained that simply by interpolating between these two points. Okay. So how are we doing with respect to time? I don't have my watch with me right now. What time is it?
11:40, sir.
11:40. Okay, so we have 10 more minutes. Okay, let's try to make the most of it. Okay, another associated set of curves, just like we had the DAD curves, is what is called the intensity, duration, frequency curves, IDF curves. Okay, I'll not go into how these are developed, but these again require long-term information, right? Just like we did depth, area, duration, very similar, right? This one is intensity, duration, frequency. We are bringing in the frequency over here, right? So the plot on the left-hand side has intensity of rainfall, right? Maximum intensity centimeters per hour on the y-axis, and on the x-axis I have the return period, right? How often this kind of a rainfall event happens, and the duration of the rainfall event. Okay. Now, can anybody tell me how to interpret this figure? Let's look at the left, the one on the left first. How do you interpret this figure, or what is it telling us? These different curves correspond to different duration of the storm. Okay, so the outermost one that you see is a 30-minute storm. A storm that lasts for 30 minutes is the outermost. The next one is a storm that lasts for 1 hour. A storm that lasts for 2 hours, and a storm that lasts for 4 hours. Okay, this is just indicative. Don't take it literally. This is just an indicative a curve. Okay, so can anybody, let's see, who can we call upon? Sindhuja.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So how would you interpret these curves? What is your intuition?
You mean like where do we use it?
No. Does this make sense to you? That's what I'm trying to ask.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll give you a hint. Okay. So let me draw a straight line over here. Okay, just assume that straight line is at 100 years. Okay, which means this one's saying wherever it is intersecting, that event is possible every 100 years.
Yeah.
So now tell me what those different points of intersection mean.
For that particular amount of time, you are likely to get that much intensity for every 100 years.
Okay, so maybe I'll ask you a question, then maybe you might be able to answer. Is it likely that you receive a very high intensity of rain for a large duration? Okay, a very high intensity of rain for a large duration, or what is more likely? Okay, very high intensity for a large duration, or a very high intensity for a smaller duration? What is more likely?
I mean, high intensity here it's for a small duration, right?
No, see, these 4 curves are for 4 different durations.
Yeah, but when the intensity is more, it doesn't last for too much time. Like,
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So you've touched a very interesting point. Okay. So I have drawn a line that is parallel to the y-axis, which is a certain return period, right? So this red line, let's assume that I've drawn it at 100. It is telling us that what is likely. So for example, it is intersecting the 30-minute curve at about 45 centimeters per hour. So it is saying that once in 100 years, you will receive a 30-minute rainfall event with a rainfall intensity of 45 centimeters per
45.
hour,
Oh,
right?
yes.
But once in 100 years, you will receive a 1 hour rainfall event with a rainfall intensity of 40 centimeters per hour. Once in 100 years, you will receive a 2 hour rainfall event with a rainfall intensity of about 30 centimeters per hour. And once in 100 years, you will receive a 4 hour rainfall event with a rainfall intensity of about 20 centimeters per hour or 22 centimeters, whatever it is. Does that make sense? As the duration of the storm increases, the intensity will reduce for the same return period.
Yes.
Okay, that is one way of interpreting it. Now, if I draw a line parallel to the x-axis, like this. Oh, that's a pretty nice straight line. I don't know how I got that. Okay. Now it is intersecting these curves at 4 different points. And it is telling me that a 30 centimeter per hour rainfall event for 30 minutes may happen every 20 years.
More frequent.
More frequent, right? The longer that high intensity has to last, the more rare it becomes. Is everybody following along? So for instance, we'll look at the extreme here. Okay, so this is the extreme point. So to receive a rainfall event with an intensity of 30 centimeters per hour, which lasts for 4 hours, it may happen only once in, I don't know, this might be 500 years, okay, or 600 years. It may not happen every year. It may happen once in 500 years. Okay. Whereas to receive a 30 centimeter per hour rainfall event, which lasts only for 30 minutes. Okay. That may happen every 20, 30 years. Right? So the more the intensity and the larger the duration of the event, the more rare it becomes. The lesser the intensity and lesser the duration of the storm, the more likely it is. That's what this curve, this set of family of curves are telling us. Okay. So whenever you have these kinds of, and see these kinds of curves, you will experience them not just in hydrology or water resources, you will experience them in most empirical geotechnical engineering. You may see some kind of curve like this. Okay. So whenever you see curves like this, always do this thing. Draw a line parallel to the x-axis, draw a line parallel to the y-axis, and see how it intersects these different curves. And from that, interpret what these curves are telling us. Okay, that is a very useful way of understanding these curves. Okay, now instead of having return period on the x-axis, if I put duration of the storm on the x-axis and put the different curves as different return periods as different curves, then you get this second set of curves that you see on the right hand side, which is exactly the same thing. Here again, if you do the same thing of drawing a line perpendicular to the x-axis or parallel to the y-axis, then it is telling you that for a storm of 2 hour duration to have an intensity of 10 centimeters per hour, that may happen every 25 years. But for the same duration to have an intensity of whatever 15 centimeters per hour, that may happen every 50 years. Whereas for the same duration for a higher intensity, it will happen only once every 100 years, right? So the same thing that we saw in the previous plot, you're seeing it in a different form in this curve. Okay, and similarly, you can draw a line that is parallel to the x-axis and find out what it interprets in terms of the different durations and the different intensities. Okay. Is that all right?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yes.
So what's the time?
50.
Okay. So I had some other plans in mind, but ended up going a little longer than usual. So with this, we have come to the end of precipitation. Next class, I will quickly discuss about your project. Okay. So precipitation, we'll have a mini project. Okay. We'll spend maybe 15-20 minutes on the mini project and then move on to the next topic in the next class. Okay. Any questions today? Okay.
Yes, sir. No questions.
No questions from you. Anybody else? All right. Yeah. Good. So let's meet on Thursday. All right. Of course, this afternoon there may be a surprise quiz. Right. So that I reserve the right to do that. Okay. See you guys on Thursday.